Okay, well, welcome to the webinar today about using story maps to share your story, even without maps. So hopefully what you've come to learn is the secrets, or at least getting some vague idea, maybe better said, about how you could use something called a story map to share your ideas, to communicate with folks. Now, one of the things to think about is that the idea of story maps are broader than what it is that we're talking about today, but we're talking about a very specific type of story map from a company called Esri that we'll go into in a little while. But first, just so you have an idea of who the main presenters are for today, I'll just let Brooke introduce herself, and then I'll chat for a little bit about who I am and why I'm involved with this.
Hi, I'm Brooke Edmonds, and I'm with Oregon State University Extension. And I got involved with this and met Shane through the extension.org through their I3 Core team, and had never heard of a story map before, and met him at one of the tabling events that they had at the event that they had in San Antonio. And it just really gelled with this is a program that I'll be able to use in my own program. So I'm really excited to be here and share what I've done.
Great, thanks. And I work at the University of New Hampshire, Cooperative Extension. I've been involved in various ways with mapping in the extension for the past 10 years. I've been involved with and now sort of head up the geospatial technology community of practice called Map Assist. And we received one of the e-extension innovation grants recently, and the long title is too long, but the basic idea is to increase the use of spatial reasoning and technology in communication and decision-making inside of cooperative extension. So when I was looking, and the team who put together this grant were looking at ways to do that exact thing. How do you increase the use of mapping for sharing information or for decision-making in extension? There's a whole variety of things that we are doing, some of which we haven't really told a lot of folks about yet. But one thing that we really strongly felt was that we needed to find a way that people in extension could relatively easily make a map or use some sort of online platform to share their ideas and communicate. And as you can see here on the stream, and I mentioned before, this company called Esri has this platform called ArcGIS Online, and one of the components of this platform is something called a story map. And it really started off as just an offshoot of their online mapping platform, but now that it's really taken off so much, there's even its own interface, and you can go to that link up there, and it'll bring you to a completely different interface than existed even a year ago that really highlights the fact that you can use these story maps to tell your stories. Now, there's lots of different types of stories that can exist, and one of the points of emphasis of this webinar is not to talk about every single type of way you can use story maps, but to really focus on story map use for folks who don't necessarily have maps. So there's many different types, and if you go to create a story map, which we will towards the end here, you'll see you have to choose from these types. But I wanted to go over the different types briefly with people. I think their interface does a pretty good job of showing it, but to decide what we're going to focus on today, I wanted to go through these. So first of all, there's just a basic story map, which means I have one map and I want to make something that looks nice to be able to share with people. In a way, it's the least powerful thing you can do, but it is one of the ways that you can use this story map platform. Another one, which is completely unrelated to all of the other uses, is something called a map tour, where you can walk around and take pictures on your phone, or you can have other pictures that you then place on a map, and that's called a map tour. But obviously, that is very related to location. Now, if you have two different maps that you want to compare, there's two different ways to do it. One's called a swipe map, where basically you have this line down the center of the screen that you can pull back and forth to reveal and hide either one map over the other or different layers. And you can also use this type called a spyglass map, which basically does the same thing, but instead of swiping back and forth, you have a little spyglass that you move around the screen to reveal that second map or layer. There are a couple others called Map Journal and Map Series, which are very well suited for sort of creating narrative and leading people along a certain path. So there's various approaches to these, and we'll look at those in a moment, but these are definitely set up for sharing a lot of information and a variety of information. And then just recently, just about a month ago, maybe even less, or right about a month ago, they came out with 2 brand new types of story maps. One's called a Cascade Story Map, and one is for crowdsourced collection of data. So we're going to talk about the Cascade Story Map, definitely. The crowdsourced map, to me, is even one of the more exciting ones that they've ever come out with. And we can perhaps have another webinar in the future talking about how that can be used. So thinking about what are we going to talk about specifically in this webinar to make decisions. We can't talk about all of them at once. So looking at which ones are really made for maps. These are obviously have some maps, sometimes only exclusively maps that you're dealing with. For these other 3, you can have maps if you want to, but if you have no maps at all, you can go ahead and use these without a problem. So for the rest of the webinar, we're going to sort of leave these others behind for the time being and focus on these 3 types, because you can use them if you have maps, but specifically, as we said in the title, even if you don't have maps, you can still use them. So what I thought we'd do now is we'd look at 3 examples of, or 1 example of each of these types of maps, just so that you get an understanding of how they look, sort of what they do, and feel free. And I don't know, Mark, are you keeping an eye on the questions? I'll just pause here to see if anybody has any questions before we go forward. We'll look at 1 example of these 3.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No questions at the moment.
Okay. So I put either short links that already existed or links that I've created for this webinar so that you can get to them quickly. I will say one of the things about the maps is that they have big, long, ugly links, although even within the interface they can give you a shorter one. But these are the 3 different maps that we're going to be looking at. And I'll cover the first 2, and then I'll pass for the third on to Brooke, since this is the type of map she made, and she can talk about what she did, why she did it, and show you her story map. All right. So this first type of map, the example that I'm using is a map that was constructed by a student in a class that I teach through the University of New Hampshire, and also with a partner at the University of Colorado. We teach a class called Crowdsource Mapping, where we teach the students various approaches to crowdsource mapping and then have them do a final project. So this student chose this format of the story map. And again, there wasn't a lot of training that was necessary. They had a bit of training, but mostly she was able to figure this out without any additional help from us after some basic training. So the first thing to notice is that this is very nice in that it has some sort of title up here, and you're sort of drawn to think, all right, maybe I should sort of click on one tab at a time. And I think part of the problem, even when you're using maps, but any website where you're trying to present information, is how do you lead people through? How do you get them to see the variety of, or the information, but have them progress through the information in the way you'd like them to? So she, on this first page, just put a series of images here. So you can see that you can be whatever you want, and I think she probably composited these all into one image and this embedded the image. And then on the next page, what is C-star wasting syndrome? She has a bit of text here on the side, and she's embedded a couple of different videos here to play. So again, not necessarily any maps. This is really sort of showing the problem with the disease and then explaining it in more detail, and then right away going into how can you help? And it turns out that there is a group that put together this C-star wasting syndrome observation log, where if you see this syndrome in your area, you can go ahead and enter this information and then submit. So this text over here, she entered herself, but this is an embedded website. So not only can you put videos and pictures, but you can also embed websites as well. Now, she actually did use a few maps in this site, partially because that was the point of the class, but just so you can see, again, if you choose maps, she put interactive maps here that showed the outbreak of this in 2013 and 2014, and then in 2015 to look at locations of this outbreak. She also created this other map that has a different format of map that has all of the different types of species shown at once in different colors. And then the last tab that she has is, again, a video embedded here, and then a blog, I think a blog, but a website embedded here as well. So by constructing this, looking at the progression of what she wanted to communicate, you can almost imagine that this is a presentation that she's giving within supporting details. You naturally navigate across one at a time to look at these different tabs. And you can include videos, blogs, websites, images, and if you happen to have them, maps, but you can see you don't necessarily need any maps in order to use this. Now there's various approaches that you can use to this template. One of them is to have tabs on the top. One of them is to have little numbers. One of the problems with this is that you can only fit so many tabs on the top, and the way the tabs show up will also depend on the resolution of your screen. So they have another version of it that has little numbers. And then there's another version that has sort of blocks here on the side that you can click on and move down one at a time instead of having them across the top. So sort of 3 different flavors of this version of Story Map. So I'll just pause to see if there's any questions there so far about this version.
None at this time.
Okay. And actually, Brooke, do you want to go ahead and talk about yours right now? Because this one that I'm going to show, the third one, is actually a bit of a departure.
Sure.
Of this now, so let's go ahead and go over to yours. And
all right. Well, let me share my screen here.
Stop sharing.
Oops. Try that again. Okay. Is that looking okay, Mark? Yeah. Okay. So I originally started this because I wanted to share an impact story of a specific program in a different way so that I could use it a little bit more socially. So the project that I was working with initially is to use social media to share a program called Seed to Supper. And a little background on that, this is a free program for beginning adult gardeners targeted to low income to help increase their food security. And so it's a partnership with our state food bank, so the Oregon Food Bank, and then Extension, and we bring this program out to the community. It's doing great things. This screen is showing our traditional impact statement that we use here. And so you can see it's kind of this short, some text and a little bit of photo, but I wanted to have a way that it would be a little bit more engaging and a way to maybe incorporate some more visuals, so maybe photos or video. So this is what I came up with, and again, this is part of the I3 core experience that I had, meeting Shane and seeing this, saying, wow, this is actually what I've been looking for. This is the map, the story map journal format. So it's designed for narrative text. You can put in a map or not. This particular program that I was working with, it really wasn't well suited to using a map because the map would just show the locations, but there wasn't anything different about those individual locations. Whereas if I was going to use this story map for my Master Gardener program, showing all the different activities they're doing, I'm definitely going to choose to integrate a map. But for this particular small program, it made sense to use this narrative format. And I'm not a tech person. This is very easy for me to use to sort of figure that out. They have great instructions. You don't have to know any of the code. You basically are collecting all of your photos, all of your content, and then you're linking it within their system. And then it does its technical magic and makes it look really nice for you. So you don't necessarily have to know all that behind the scenes, which is really useful to me. So this is that same impact statement, just presented in a different way. And so with the journal, this is actually a scroll bar. And so when you're viewing, you'll scroll through, and then there's different panels that will change depending on what you put in there. And so pulled a lot of photos, and it's basically going through the same steps that an impact statement would. What's the problem, and then what are your solutions, and then what happened at the end. And so, not to make you dizzy, but we'll scroll through this. It is publicly available, although it is a work in progress, so any suggestions are definitely welcome. But just going through, in this case, the specific program, what's covered, And then scroll down here, some of our partners that we worked with. You can embed their logos, you can have links, which is really great. So you can, link it back to your extension site, link it back to your partner agencies. Lots of photos. I mean, that's what I thought was really great, is that that's how a lot of people really respond to the stories that you're telling, is by showing these photographs and showing their relationships. And yeah, there's text, but you're also you're demonstrating that relationship in a real strong visual way. And then you can also incorporate video, which I thought was great. So this one is a little small because I was trying to salvage some cell phone video that someone had taken, but you can actually have this size so that it'll fill up this whole entire screen. You can have it start to autoplay when you scroll over it, or they can press play there. And so overall, I think it's really great. It's something that we could share with, say, our county commissioners or with our other partner agencies. And it's a little bit more visual, it's a little bit more engaging, and it's really flexible. That's the thing that I really like about this program, is that the story maps are really flexible, and I can see a lot of uses too for all of my other programs to incorporate this. Do you want to go through the next one, Shane, or do you want to add something to this one?
All I was going to say is that this is, to me, it's fabulous that you came away from that meeting with this idea, and then you went ahead and were able to do it. It did take time, I imagine, because the problem is, in this case, it's probably not the technology, but thinking, what is the story you want to tell, and gathering the pictures. But I have more and more people that are interested in this idea of taking what were sort of standard impact reports and then making them into this format. It seems like a pretty compelling use of this. And in some ways, it's funny, I don't know that story map anymore is the right word for these things in some ways, but I think that this is a wonderful example of its use. The other thing is, and I don't know if you can do this on your screen depending on how you have it set up, but that these are responsive, so they're smart and they know what size device you have them on. So I don't know if you've ever looked at yours on an iPad or a phone, but you can pretend that they are if you take the corner of the screen and drag it, or the corner of the
see if we can do that.
and if you're not in full screen at least.
Is that
yeah, if you take the corner or the edge of the window and drag it to the left, you grab it.
Not sure if it'll be responsive on a webinar. That might be asking. Is that showing any changes there?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's getting smaller.
Yeah. And I have tried it on my cell phone, and it's worked the same, and you can see the videos, and that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that's an important thing to consider, is that as more and more people are viewing these things on different devices, the fact that these templates have that responsiveness built in is really important to think about.
Shane,
Especially out in the field, for example, to show somebody something when you're out there and all you have is your phone, it's good that these things work well on phones.
Shane, Dawn and Chad asked about that C-star wasting example you gave. Is that online?
Yeah, so if you look back at this slide, when I come back, I'll have the slide up. I created a shortcut to it.
If you want to put that in chat, that might be an easy way for folks to click on it.
Yeah, okay. I can do that. All right, is there any questions specific to Brooks or anything else that we want to talk about or people have questions about before we switch over to the third example? Let me see here if I can get back.
Stop share here.
Brooke, I think Dawn also asked about the URL to your project too.
Sure.
I can, let me get out of this. Here's the three. Let me see if I can get into this. That's one. This is.
Oh, Shane probably has some nice shortened ones for you, but there's the big long one.
Yeah, that's why I created a short one. I mean, ArcGIS also creates a short one as well.
Yeah.
Is it going through?
Let's see that. Well, Brooks did. Yeah, yours or not? I'm not seeing anything from you, Shane.
Okay. Well, I can go ahead and put them on later then if it's not working.
Rosemary over in Q&A asked, are you using a specific program to do the map journal?
Say that? I don't understand that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The map journal is within this suite of the Esri, is that how you say it? Esri story maps. So it's just one of the versions that when you go log on to the story map website, you can pick how you want to show your project. And so there's all these different choices. And so what Shane's showing with the C-Star one was a version that had the tabs. And then this journal version is just a different, yeah, he's pulling that up right now. It's just a different way of showing it. And yeah, all the photos and video, they're hosted on different servers. So my photos are all on Flickr, the videos coming in as a link from YouTube, so you can change those things out. And then you're just sort of putting it into this framework.
Yeah, so these are all, as Brooke's saying, these are all examples of story maps. They're just different story map templates that are within that system. All right.
Victor asked about analytics on these, that I guess once you create these projects and post them live, is there any way to get any analytics as far as how many people viewed the website or web page or anything like that?
I think that there is. I think there's a way to set up Google Analytics on them. I have to say, I have to look into that more, but I've read that there are ways to do that.
It at least gives you rough counts. It might not break it down for you, but you can see how many views that it's getting.
Yeah, definitely. So just one quick example of something called the Cascade Story Map, which came out recently. It was one of the story maps that Esri made as a custom map, and then had this little asterisk next to it that said, coming soon in 2016 as a template. Well, it came out about a month ago, and I was at a conference, an extension conference, where I was giving a lightning talk about how to mapping your way to better engagement. And I thought, well, what a great way for me to try this, to take my presentation and turn it into this Cascade Story Map. Now, this is a very similar in the idea that you're telling a narrative story, but it's very different in the way that it's arranged. So I'm sure that people have seen websites like this before, but the idea of this website is that you scroll down, or this, of course, is an arrow to get you to start scrolling down. But as you scroll down, different panels float up. And you can have different types of panels. This is something called a title. So I just said, this is what I gave at this conference. And they gave me a chance to give this title. So I basically took slides and the main points of my presentation and then put this together. So you can have full screen videos or images, and then have sort of these little blurbs of text that are floating up. And you can control where they are, what they look like, a decent amount. And so my idea was that maps are important, but you may not have the right maps, and can you make your own map? And so then I had these main points, so I was able to put this text sort of as a question and then answer it. And I did a few more of these. And then you have a separate way that you can also show it, maybe having it a bit smaller, not taking up the whole screen, and having text blurbs. So these are additional ways that you can show information. Now these can be pictures, videos, the same as the other ones. They can be live. I chose not to have them be, and I didn't choose to use any interactive maps, but you could if you want to, but at the end, this one has none. And then as you scroll down, again, it shows different images, text. And I'm just trying to get...
Brent, somebody made a statement. This looks like Adobe Slate.
Could be. It's funny because somebody, when I was talking about that map tour, they said in a conference, actually it was the e-extension meeting in March, they said, well, can't you do this with Instagram, or can't you do this with this? I think there's lots of different ways that you can do all of these types of things. I'm not familiar with Adobe Slate. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that was what the comment was.
More to do these. The thing that I think is cool about this is that number one, it's free. I don't know if Adobe Slate is free or not. But the other thing is that if you did want to use maps with it, then you have the complete mapping sort of infrastructure that a lot of these others don't have. But if in the cases if you don't have mapping involved and you're interested in already in the Adobe world, it may very well be that Adobe Slate could work better. All right, so I'm just going down to the very end here. I just wanted to show that you can also embed websites. And at my very last slide or section of this story map is actually another story map. So at the very end of my presentation, I said you should go to this website. We have different webinars. And so I took a story map, this same tab template, and then for each of the webinars that are on this topic, I created a tab and then embedded the website. So here's the 5 webinars that we've done over the past year that are related to creating maps and story maps, including this one today. So this is a story map that's a slide inside of another story map. Okay, any questions? This is obviously different, but it's another way that you can display and share information.
Dawn makes a comment or question here, said, which CMS does your state use and how do you integrate your story maps? So that's a good question. We're going to talk now more specifics about the story maps, and I think that'll be shown as we go along here. So I wanted just to show people briefly how you would create one of these yourself. That was before we go on to resources, that was the last little bit that we want to do. So that question will be answered. Any other questions before we go forward, or anything else that Brooke, you want to say before we move forward?
Nope, sounds good.
So to create a story map, you have to have an ArcGIS Online account. There's 2 different types of accounts you can get. One is called an organizational account. And if you ever try ArcGIS and click this button and sign up for the 60-day trial, you're getting a free version for 60 days of the paid account. If you work at a university, which a lot of people on this line do, your university probably already has an ArcGIS Online account. They may not be giving out information to people, or you may not know about it, but you likely already have this. Brooke, when you went back to work, did you get one through your university that already existed?
I did. Yeah, I did. I just contacted the tech support and they sent me the information and was able to really quickly log on and have full access.
Okay. If you aren't at a university, you can also get the paid version of the account. It depends on who you are. Sometimes it can be expensive, but there is a version for nonprofits that's $100 a year. But you don't need the paid version to do this. In fact, there's a free public account that you can get. And also, relatively new, you can get a public account by signing in with your Facebook credentials or your Google Plus credentials. I personally don't like to do that, but some people do. So there's ways that you can make this. Every story map that you see, you do not need to have the fancy version of the account, with the one exception of the crowdsourced map. That you do have to have the fancier version. So there's nothing stopping you from going today and just signing up for a public account and being able to make the types of maps that you're looking at here. And just very briefly, the difference between the paid version and the free version, there are several differences, but one is the amount of control you have over privacy. When you have the organizational level account, you have a lot more specific ways in which you can collaborate with people and control privacy. You can also do spatial analysis online, which is something you only care about if you're doing maps. But and the other one is that it allows you to do mobile mapping because you can do editing online and create apps that let you have people walking around in the field contributing back up to the cloud. But as far as creating story maps and all the stuff we're talking about today, you can do it equally well with both of these. And we have other webinars that go into a lot more detail with this, but I just wanted to mention that. Especially if you don't want to get an organizational account or you can't, make sure you get to the point where you get to create a free public account so you don't get your stuff locked up after 60 days. Okay. So just briefly show you how to create different types of story maps. So if you go to storymaps.arcgis.com and click on My Stories and log in, you get to an interface that looks like this, which is very, very nice. This right here, this ready set map, is that story map that's in the very bottom of that last Cascade map that I showed you. And as Brooke mentioned, you can see at least how many times it's been viewed. So if I want to create a brand new story map, I can just click here where it says Create Story. And then it asks me what kind I'd like to choose. So let's go ahead and choose a map journal. It's fun. Notice if you float over this, it gives you a little brief blurb about what it is, and also there's the Ask the Pros section where they try to lead you through choosing which one you would like. I'm going to choose Map Journal, and it's going to launch it. And both the Map Journal and the series operate in a very similar way where you have options, so I can either have the side panel, I think this is what Brooke chose, or it's floating. I'll start with the side. And basically what it's doing is leading you through constructing each slide that you have. So for example, I'm going to call this Map Journal, Mapping is Fun. And click the arrow. Notice too, they have Take a Tour. They have lots of different ways you can show this information. So if Mapping is Fun, and you are constructing it, let me just cancel this. Yes, it shows it. There's a main stage and a side panel. And what you're deciding is for each time you have a slide or a set of information you want people to see, what's on the main stage and then what's on the side panel. So you can see you have options as maps. If you have a map inside of ArcGIS Online, you can choose it. So you can see all this stuff, all the maps that I have, that I've created are here. If you don't have a map, that's fine. You can choose an image or a video or a web page. Now notice the options for images: Flickr, Facebook, Picasso, which I imagine is Google Photos, and if you have the actual URL, you can enter that. For videos, the two standard ones and then other, and then you can also have a web page either by embed code or just by copying and pasting the web page address. So first thing I'm going to do is look for Flickr images that I have set up here. So UNHCEGIS, I just created a public album under that user. And so let's look here, and I'll pick one of these images. You get to choose how you'd like it positioned, and then click Next. And then this, right now, let me choose what's on the main stage. Now I go to the side panel, say, Nothing is fun, new travel. And as you see, you have very rich controls over here about what you can do. You can embed links. You can put different sorts of images. There's this new thing, which we're not going to get into in this webinar, but maybe for future, where you have main stage actions, where you can trigger things to happen on this side based on what you click over here, which is very recent. So if I click Add, then it's created my first section. Mapping is from you travel, and here's what's on the side. So then I click on Add Section, and I'm going to say that the section title is Learn How to Do This in Person. If you live in New Hampshire. I'm going to take our website for our local, for what we, the workshop we teach, and just paste it in here. And you can see this configure button that lets you choose different options. It's going to keep it standard. I'm going to say, come one, come all. Click Add. So now I've made the second section of the page. Now what I've found sometimes is the embed works really well, and other times it doesn't. It depends on the website. So occasionally what you have to do is figure out if you can copy and paste the URL, or you have to do something that's a little bit different. So if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to use a different one. Let's go ahead and say, learn how to do this online. I'm going to choose a web page, which is this. Save. So this is the webinar that we offered on how to create this sort of map using your phone. Click Add Section and say, and if you missed the webinar, you can watch the recording. And if I click on video and then YouTube, I copy and paste the YouTube video and click check. It finds the video, and I click on select this video. And again, you have the options of whether to center or fit or custom, and in this case, I'll go ahead and fill the screen with it. Add. So now I have my small story map with a map journal. I start on this page, and it goes from one tab to the other. And you can imagine that you can continue to construct this. So a couple of things to mention. Number one, it says story isn't saved yet, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And when you save it, it's telling you a couple of things. Number one, how is your story going to be visible to people? Now, I created this inside of an organizational account, so I have this option. If you just had a public account, what you would see is private versus public. So you can shield things with a private account, but you don't have a lot of control over it. So if I wanted anybody to actually see this, I would just click on public. And right there, it's giving me two options. Number one, of course, you can click the long website. Number two, here's the short version that they give you that you can use. You can click on here for Facebook or Twitter shares. And right here, you can embed in a website. So all you have to do in whatever website you're currently using, your CMS, whatever it is, as long as it supports iframe embedding, which vast majority of them do or can, this is all you need. And all it's doing is saying, you know what, I want the height of this to be 800 pixels. I want the frame width to be 100% of the page. And then I want a couple of different options. You can change this to be set options here, or you can just go ahead and change the code itself. Once you have this set the way you'd like, you just copy and paste it. And if you have enough ability to control your website by getting to the HTML, you can put this in yourself. Or if not, you can send this to your web person, and they can embed it. The important thing to realize is once it's embedded, you don't have to bother them again. Any changes in the map that you make will automatically be shown in the web page because it's pointing to your map. So once it's embedded once, you just have to edit this story map in order for the changes to be shown on your website. So just to show, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it into a web browser in which I'm not logged into ArcGIS Online, just so you can see what it looks like when somebody's not logged in. And of course, this is a real embedded website, so you can go through here, you can look at things, you can click on links, and when you go to the video, as Brooke said, you have different options for how you handle it and display it. So of course, to do what Brooke did, there's a lot more thought involved. It's a lot longer than what I just showed you, but the basics of it are what we just covered here. Add sections, you have a side and a main stage, panel and a main stage, and choose what's in each of those. Also notice this organize button. You can resort the slides. You can do a variety of things. Also in your settings, if you said, oh, I really wanted a floating panel instead of a side panel, you can go back and change that and click apply, and then it will change the way that it's set up. So getting to the settings is fairly easy to do. You have the ability to control a lot of different things. Also notice in the header, you can have the Esri logo or none or yours, and you can control what these links are and whether or not people are allowed to share it easily from your, I think, let's go back here. This little share button here, let me go back, is controlled by, oh, up here, sorry. These share buttons are controlled right here, whether or not you want people to be able to do that. So as Brooke mentioned, you have a decent amount of control. It's not too difficult to do, and you don't have to know any coding in order to do it. If you do have coding capability and you want to download the template and you want to put it on your own website and web server and you want to control it to a greater extent, then you definitely can do that. There are ways to do that. But you don't have to do that at all in order to create one of these and share them. Let me just save this. If I go back to my stories, now that I've created it, it notices, hey, you look like you've created a new story. I can click refresh stories, and then it will show up there. Now, one thing I think is kind of odd is that it doesn't automatically create a thumbnail, but you can upload a thumbnail if you take a screenshot. and it gives you some basic information. I mean, one thing you probably want to do is put in a summary so that if people find it, they can have information on that. I don't know if Brooke put in a summary or if other people who make these put in a summary, but it's a good practice to put in a summary of what that story map is trying to show. Any questions on that?
No, Carl had a couple questions about crowdsourcing or the crowdsource option. It says is crowdsource available with a nonprofit account, and then how would one access crowdsource data?
Yeah, so a couple of things. And I think the crowdsource, the way you collect data using these maps is a very different topic. So I think it even is worth, especially with this new map, even before the new story map, but now that the new story map exists, it's definitely worth a whole webinar on its own. But just briefly, yes, you can do it with the nonprofit account. The nonprofit account is an organizational account. So it's one of the fancy ones, even though it costs less than if you were, for example, a consulting engineer or you worked for General Electric or something like that. So yes, you can do it. You cannot do it with a public account that's free, but you can do it with any organizational account, including the nonprofit account. And then how you deal with the data, where it lives, how you grab it, how people contribute to it. As I said, that's an entire webinar just on its own. Could even be more than one webinar. So it's more than we want to get into today, but it's definitely worth exploring in more detail. Sorry, it would be a long conversation, but a good one to have. All right, and just quickly, if people have more questions, they can go ahead and ask, but I'll also just show you briefly a map series. It's a very similar process to create one of these. You can see, as I mentioned, there are 3 different options: tabbed, side accordion, or bulleted. You've already seen a tabbed one, so let me do the side accordion just so people have an idea. And it's the same thing. What do you want to call it? The same mapping is fun. And I'm going to add an entry. So the first entry is going to be an image, Flickr. And let me grab one of, actually, no, let's go back.
While you're doing that, Shane, I'll let our attendees know, and unless Shane or Brooke object, if anyone would like to share, we have the ability to make your audio and video live. So if you have maybe a story of or would like to share about how you're using mapping at your organization, and you just want to take a minute or two and do that, we can promote you to a panelist, and you can share that information with us live. You can just let me know in chat.
Yeah. And so you can see, I'm not even going to go through constructing the entire map because you see it's very, very similar. You basically have a side area here and you have a main stage. And you want to click another one, so you click add. And I'll just say, learn how to map online. And we're going to embed a web page, which is this web page. And I'll just add one more just to have a third. I'm going to do a similar thing where I save it. Oh, yeah. Huh. Can't have more than one. Mapping is fun. Rudman edition. And once it's done saving, it'll give me that ability to make it public. And I'll take this link, move it over to here so you can see it. And this one, of course, as you click down, there's 1, 2, 3. That's when these fold up and down to then show what's over here. And often you'll have more than just a few of these, and you'll have some text here. So it's usually not this big blank area, but it gives you an idea of the way, in addition to the tabs on the top, of the way you can do this.
Shane, Melissa asked, do you have an example you can show of what it looks like when you embed a story map inside a website?
Yeah, the one that I showed, let me show it again here. So at the very bottom of this Engage with Maps, this is a story map that's embedded inside of this web page, which the web page happens to be a story map. But let me do something here. We'll say move tab to new window, so it takes over the whole screen. Yeah. So this is embedded inside of this page. I told it to be 100% of the width of this page, so it's even maybe a little bit difficult to know that it's embedded, but it is embedded as a last.
Mindy asked about, she says, could these stories be pinned in Pinterest?
Could they be pinned?
Yeah.
In Pinterest? Yeah, sure. I mean, all you need in Pinterest is a link, right? Whether or not it would draw the right.
Well, that was my thought. I wonder. I don't know how it would. That would be interesting to know how it what pin, what sort of frame it chooses as its pin. So I think that would be the question.
Let's find out. We have the Pinterest thing here. Let me click and see what happens. No thanks. Nice. Mapping your way to better engagement. Yeah, maybe it doesn't know. Maybe it can't search through and find the image.
Title. It looks like it just puts the title up there.
Yeah. So maybe what you're going to have to do is after you do it, you can go into this and add an image. Because in Pinterest, even I don't even know where to put this. I don't have a category for this. I'll just put this in here for now. Artistic map. You see the pin.
Jackie asked about the recording, and Jackie, I'm putting the recording will be available as inside the locations section inside the Learn event, and I just put a link to the Learn event there. It'll take a day or so. Shane, I can't remember. Am I gonna take care of the video or?
I was on ours, but it can be in multiple places. I was gonna put on the Map Assist YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, but anyway, I usually do some editing and processing, so it should be available in a day or two.
On Pinterest, right? It doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't. You can always put. There's ways to get an image into here if you want to edit the image, I believe. At least I've done that before. It'd be interesting to see if people play with it. It definitely does lead back. I mean, the link leads back to here, but you need to find a different way to get your image in there. Good question.
Dawn asked about. She said, "Does this give the ability to indoor wayfinding / navigation?"
Does the map give the ability to do indoor navigation?
See, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, there are ways using story maps. If you're displaying a map as part of your story map, you have the ability to let people use the location information of their device. That's one of the options if one of these things is an embedded story map. Sorry, if it's an embedded map. So if one of these main stage items is a map, you can have it have a little button that says find my location. When you click on it, it will zoom down to where you are on that map. And if you're indoors, as long as you have a mobile device, it's not using GPS when you're indoors, it's probably using cell phone tower location. Normally, depends on where you are, but you can usually get a pretty decent indoor location. But the story map itself would have to be some sort of map-related item there in order to use your location.
Someone was asking about embedding it into a website. So there's the winner of the story map contest. I don't know if you saw that, Shane. Esri hosted this contest, and the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society won the grand prize, and they actually have embedded it into their website. So I'll put up the link to that in the chat, and if you go onto that report page, you want me to share it really quick? Do a share screen real quick?
Sure. And how you do it is right here. Remember, if you click on share your story, this is the code that you need right here. But yes, if you could maybe put, either share your screen.
I'll do that really quick just so people can see what this looks like on a somebody else's website. So this is their annual report website, and they embedded it. So this box right here, I think it has some birds chirping. So they have a video that auto plays, and then you can just scroll through and they put their whole entire annual report, and it's embedded right into their, right in there, and they have lots of maps. I mean, this is like over the top. I mean, this is really, really cool one. But this is what it looks like on their website. So that's an example. But keep in mind, this is the grand prize winner, so it has tons of interactive maps and features.
Yeah.
I will stop sharing if you want to pull something else up, Shane.
Yeah. All right, just a couple of final points here, because I know we're getting close to time. So first of all, just from the responsiveness standpoint, I grabbed one of these maps that I just made, and I'm going to shift it. If you notice, there's a certain point where it's flexing the information, but then it shifts over. So this is what this map would look like on a mobile device. And this is what it would look like sort of on an iPad, and then this is what it would look like on a full computer. So there are differences that it will adjust and still let you interact with the map. And the very last thing I wanted to talk about just very briefly was, if you're interested in finding out more, number one, or number two, hopefully, when you have good examples of your use of online maps for outreach and engagement, we would love to find out about them. Create a brand new website as part of this work we've been doing over the past year or so. And just to show you briefly, it's at exgeospatial.org. And a couple of features of it. Number one, we have webinars, as you might imagine, and including this one today, but there's a whole bunch of different webinars that we've done in the recent past on story maps, ArcGIS Online, and then things we've done in the past about different ways to use mapping. Click on webinars, you'll find that. You click on map tails. We're trying to build these up different ways in which people are using maps for outreach and engagement. But one thing I think is really cool is if you just look here and click on maps, here's examples of online maps, mostly story maps, but not all. They're being used for outreach and engagement purposes. And if you have an app, so hopefully this, number one, acts as a way to inspire you about ways that things could be used. But also if you have one, for example, Brooke's here, it's fairly easy to get us the information to create this post. Each of these map posts are just looking for the same sort of standard set of information. And you can either get in touch with me by email, but one thing you can do if you click on the Share tab here and scroll down, if you're a Twitter person, you can tweet things to us. But if not, and you have a map to share, it says Share via Form, Map, Submit a Form. And if you click on this link, if you plug in your information here and click Submit, that sends the information to us. We can create a post that looks like this, and then send it back to you to look at to make sure that what you've done, or what we've done, is accurate and represents what you meant it to represent. So in a way, we hope that this website acts as a way to inspire people to use them, to give people examples of how they can be used, and also to show off a little bit and share information about how they are using story maps or online mapping of any type to connect with folks. And if you're interested in the group that's putting this together, if you click on About Us, there's lots of information where we are in it and various things about how to get in touch. But again, it's exgeospatial.org, and I can copy that into I think I can copy that into the pod. It's always fun to try to do this while you're presenting. For somebody else to do that in, that would be good.
I'll put in a plug for the people community. I'll just put a link in the chat for that also.
So that's all that we had. Hopefully we were able to cover a variety of topics to give you an idea about how story maps could be used, even if you don't have maps, showed some specific examples, gave you a little bit of an idea how you could create one, and then this is contact information for both Brooke and myself, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any other questions that people have at this point.
Carl asked about can we share maps made by other products that are not Esri?
What type of other products?
And I'm just thinking, just from home, I'm thinking, Google, if you had some kind of Google map or something like that.
I don't know. I think it would depend. You can embed almost any web page, so
He says
if it has an iframe capability, what's that?
He says cart ODB. I'm not sure if that's
AB. I haven't tried it. It's interesting to see how competitors handle using information from competitors' products. I don't know, if CartoDB allows you, or Tableau, or Mango Map, or whatever, allows you to have an embeddable chunk of their map, probably an iframe, you should be able to. I don't know if they would put something to block it. My guess is it's something like Google Maps, it wouldn't work. That's only a guess, but I think it's worth a try, because you can embed almost anything.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Any mapping product, whether it's Google or anything else, you can always create a web page. Once you've got a web address, you can create an iframe, and then you can put that inside an Esri story.
Yeah, and pretty much all of them, that same interface where you click share and to put embed in website, all of the online mapping projects have something that looks like that. Let's see, is there anything else? Do you see any other questions?
No other questions. Okay, folks, this is your last chance. Again, this is being recorded, and if you return to the Learn link, the link in learn.extension.org in a couple of days, that should be available there. Okay, no more questions. So Shane and Brooke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.